I just need affirmation. We'll start without Josh just because there's a lot of things to go over. He texted me earlier that he's coming, so I did.
Great. Well, thanks for coming. We're here for the February 25th zoning board of appeals meeting. We're going to start with a few administrative items before we get to the applications. You want to start with
I've got
the
a
minutes?
long series of approvals here. I'll go as quickly as possible. Please save everyone's ears here. First, we have minutes, January 21st meeting. Need a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
The second.
Jamie with the second.
Okay.
Excuse me. All in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? Abstained, motion's carried. Series of resolutions here. First, 933 Kinney Street. This is applicant Josephine Rodriguez. And I have four separate decisions here. First, resolution approving an area variance of 9.5 feet for a front yard setback. Motion in a second for all these.
I'll make the motion.
Kelly, second by Jamie. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained, motion's carried. Second, resolution approving area variance of 13.6 feet for a total side yard setback. By Jamie. Second by Kelly. All in favor? Opposed? Abstained, motion's carried. Third, resolution approving area variance of 3.3 feet for side yard setback on the north side. Motion by Jamie. Second by Joe, all in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fourth, resolution approving area variance of 3.3 feet for side yard setback on the south side of parcel.
Except
Jamie. Second by Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Second, just one resolution for 4485 South Street, this is Andrew and Crystal Payne. It's a resolution approving an area variance of 584 square feet for an approved parking area. 20 feet by 40 feet.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Kelly. Second by Joe, all in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion carried. Third. Three resolutions for 584 Oak Ridge Street, this is Taco Bell. First, resolution approving area variance of 25 feet for the front yard setback. By Joe, second by.
Second.
That's favor,
Yes.
opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Second, resolution approving area variance of 16 feet for building height.
I'll make the motion.
Kelly, Jamie, all in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Third, resolution approving an area variance of 18 feet for landscape buffer. Jamie, second by Max, all in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fourth, 6620 Fly Road, this is Upstate Pathology Lab. Two resolutions. First, resolution to approve an area variance to locate a dumpster in the front yard.
I'll make a motion.
Cal, second by
Second.
X, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Second, resolution approving area variance of 19% to increase reserve parking to 44%.
Motion.
Kelly, second by Max, favor,
Aye.
opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fifth, 5761 Sealy Drive, Chick-fil-A. Two resolutions. First, area variance of 19 inches to increase the height of 7 separate signs.
I'll make.
Jamie,
Second.
Joe, all in favor? Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Second, resolution approving an area variance of 1.75 feet to increase the size of one directional sign. Motion by Jamie,
Second.
second by Max, got in there first, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Okay. These are the long ones. Sixth, I have Lot A, 4075-4077 Newcourt Ave, 8 resolutions. First, resolution approving an area variance of 21% building coverage.
Motion.
Kelly,
I'll second.
Jamie, favor? Opposed, abstain, motion's carried. If I could hear some ayes, that would be great. When I say approve, I feel better about it. That's all I need. Second, resolution approving area variance of 5% for lot coverage. Motion by Jamie,
Second.
second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Opposed, abstaining, motion's carried. Third, area variance of 25 feet for front yard setback. Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fourth, resolution approving area variance of 12 feet for the west side yard setback. Motion by Jamie, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fifth, resolution approving of the area variance of 0.8 feet for the east side yard setback.
Make a motion.
Motion by Kelly. Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Sixth. Fifth, resolution approving area variance of 20.8 feet for a combined side yard setback. Motion by Kelly,
Second.
second by Max, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Seventh. Resolution approving area variance of 38.5 feet for a rear yard setback. Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Cal, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Eighth, resolution approving area variance of 14 feet for building height of 14 feet. Motion by Jamie,
I'll second.
second by Kelly. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Last but not least, lot B, 4075-4077 Newport Ave. 8 more resolutions. First, resolution approving area variance of 24% for building coverage.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kelly,
Second.
second by Jamie, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Second, resolution approving area variance of 6% for lot coverage. By Jamie, second by Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Third, resolution approving area variance of 24.4 feet for front yard setback.
Make a motion.
Motion by Jamie,
Second.
second by Kelly, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fourth. Resolution approving area variance of 0.8 feet for the west side yard setback.
I'll make.
By Kelly. Second by Jamie, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fifth, resolution approving area variance of 12 feet for the east side yard setback.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Jamie,
Second.
second by Max, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Fifth. Sixth, resolution approving area variance of 20.8 feet for a combined side yard setback. By Kelly, second by Jamie, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Seventh, resolution approving area variance of 28.6 feet for a rear yard setback. Motion by Jamie,
Second.
by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Lastly, resolution approving area variance of 14 feet for the building height of 14 feet. Jamie. Second, by Kelly, favor? Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. It was not as bad as I thought it might be. Only took 9 minutes.
Shorter than it took to do.
Yes, our first case is a tabled case for Michael Roberts Associates. No notice required. Whenever you're ready, Brody. anything, I'm happy to do so up here.
Sorry.
She missed the fun part.
I don't know. Minutes?
Yes,
Hopefully.
yes, the minutes and decisions.
If sorry, I'll pass out of you. Of course.
Okay, so my name is Brody Smith, I'm an attorney for Bonchett and King. I represent Michael Roberts Associates, the contract vendee, which is seeking to purchase 5575 Thompson. This property is 0.87 acres in terms of its size. It's a two-story commercial building. It's 4,696 square feet. It's zoned R2. The history of the property is from 1984 to 2007. It was owned by the American Heart Association and used as offices. After that, it was sold in January 16th, 2007 to the United Church of Christ. And from 2007 until 2020, it was used as offices for the Church of Christ. The zoning, your current zoning law was adopted after that transaction in December 10th, 2007, same year later that year. And then the property was vacant beginning in 2020. It has remained vacant until now. So from 2020 to 2025, it's been vacant. We appeared at the previous meeting and provided some additional background, which you have, and I won't run through those things again. But in summary, a sworn affidavit was provided by Jeffrey Roney, who has been engaged in the real estate business in this area since 1992. He's an expert in the field of real estate. He provided photographs about the layout and the interior configuration of the building. It's clearly office space is the takeaway from all those photographs attached to the affidavit, this description in terms of its layout, its format, and its build. The expert also provided data as to the revenues and the expenses associated with the property. There are no revenues. So in terms of the dollars and cents evidence that needs to be provided in connection with the use variance, a lot of times you look into those cases and there'll be like a forensic, there'll be an accountant, or there'll be people making business projections because there'll be a going concern that's making a certain amount of money and they're asking for the use variance to change it to a different business or a different potential use that would make more money. Here, your math is much easier. The current revenue is nothing. And the expenses that they've incurred since it's been vacant is $41,501, most of the taxes. No, I take that back. It's probably not mostly taxes, but that's the total expenses.
Over what time period?
From 2020 through 2024, they've incurred $41,501, 41 cents in expenses to maintain the property.
Can you give me that
And
figure
no
again?
revenue.
Just give me that figure.
Sure, actually, I'll do better. Here you go.
Okay.
So that's in evidence and that's. And then also, provided along with that were the listings. The listings have been initially was listed at 495,000, and that was lowered multiple times till eventually it was listed at 425,000. It's been on the market for 5 years. At the last meeting, the board requested some additional information. In particular, additional information from the current listing agent. So that was our independent expert, expert in the field of real estate. But there was additional information the board viewed would be helpful from the listing agent. She was present, but for the sake of the record, we've produced another affidavit. So there's another sworn affidavit that's been provided ahead of time. That's in evidence and part of the record. So I'll hit the highlights of that affidavit. I don't like reading long documents to groups of people that you've had it. I can answer questions about any specifics. Let me hit the highlights. So this listing agent has been in the business for 20 years, more than 20 years, started in 2003. There's been multiple agencies, I should say, agent brokers that have listed it. She's the second one that's been brought in her company. It's listed on MLS, various social media, the website, signage, physical signage, and then direct contacts to other agents and brokers by phone by the current listing agent. It's been on the market for more than 2,000 consecutive days. The agent provides in her affidavit the averages for different property types in terms of the amount of time that you would expect property to be listed in the area. Though it varies from type of property, none of them are more than a year. For residential, it's more like 40 days. So it's hot market, right? So this is 2,000 days, or 40 times what you would expect.
Roby, can I interrupt? Are you raising that to deal with the unique hardship element or?
Thank you, that's a good question. So the reason we're providing these affidavits, these expert affidavits.
Well, just the difficulty in selling it.
Right, this is specifically to talk about the first factor. So we're specifically providing dollars and cents evidence that the applicant cannot realize a reasonable return under the current zoning, right? So the different ways that we can provide that evidence, there's a couple different ways, right? But in terms of the reasoning here, I'll pivot for a second from the affidavit to talk about these photos, which I think illustrate the point best. Is if you look at these are street view photos. I'll just walk you through it. This is standing on Thompson. If you look to the left, that big red arrow, that's the driveway to the subject property.
My kids go to GCC, so I drive this road every day.
Yeah, and this is not far from the DeWitt Community Church, so we know this area. And so looking to the right, that's the DeWitt Cleaners parking, right? There's an aerial here that provides some of the same view. Cutting to the chase, the problem with this property, the reason that it's not marketable is it's zoned residential for single family residential use. It's across the street from the DeWitt Cleaners parking lot. Looks at Erie Boulevard, and across Erie Boulevard, the vacant shopping town property. It is the opinion of both of the real estate experts that this property cannot be used in terms of due to its location for single family residential use. In addition, the experts provide testimony in both their affidavits that the current structure is not suitable to be used as a single family residence. It's evidently a commercial building. It's nearly 4,700 square feet. And it's just not a house. It's not set up like a house. It's an office.
So the idea is there's a unique hardship and there's no way to make any money with its current configuration and location.
Correct, zero. Yeah, it's been on the market for 5 years and there's no money coming. So it's not one of those things we've got to count. The map data wouldn't teach us anything we didn't. It was shown 68 times by the current listing agent. They had 4 people approached them out of those 68 to provide offers. Once they got into it though, and they looked at the zoning, they all withdrew that interest because none of them could comply with the current zoning. It's cost prohibitive to convert it to an apartment building or anything like that as well. So there was even some interest from a church. Remember, under your R2 zoning, it could conceivably be used for a religious purpose. There is no parking. It is 0.85 acres. It couldn't be a church because there's not enough space to have a parking lot to support a church. So what we have is the opportunity here. The other set of drawings that I provided you are the elevations showing how the property could be improved in terms of its outward appearance with relatively minor modifications to the exterior. But it would be, the appearance of it would be significantly enhanced by, landscaping, changing the location of the front door, painting the general repairs to be used as a office building. Now, you may be asking, why do we even need to ask you for a variance? It's been an office building since the 80s, right? Well, under the zoning that was adopted in 2007, the current zoning, in December of 2007, it's not zoned for an office. It could be zoned for religious use, but that's not what my client is. My client's not a church, right? So taking through the factors, no negative change to the character of the neighborhood. This property has always been used as an office, whether it's an office for the Heart Association, Church of Christ, or my client, still an office use. In terms of office uses, my client's business, their financial advisors, is about as low impact as it could possibly be. Not that many employees, not client visits. It's a low impact use in terms of office space. It's not like a dentist's office where if someone coming in and gets payments, it's not that way. In terms of the ability to obtain a reasonable return on a profit, I think you've seen that we've provided a lot of evidence, sworn testimony from people who are obviously experts in the field. And, we've really scratched our head. We can't think of any other way to show, that the location, the configuration is not suitable for the current market to be used as the property is zoned. And so we've obtained the best possible experts we can think of to give you that information. I think you have a solid record on that. It's unique. When you look at a zoning map from 30,000 feet, it is near the residential zoning. Don't deny that. If you go the other direction, which from Erie Boulevard, there's houses back there. So on a map, it kind of makes sense. But with the curve of the road, this property is on the curve. It's pushed out into the bend of Erie Boulevard, across the street from a dry cleaners. It's unique. I mean, I think everybody here has been there. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's different. It's not a good spot to build a house. It's hard. I think it's hard to deny that there's a unique problem that we're faced here. And what I've always been taught, 20 years of doing zoning and planning, is that zoning codes are not a suicide pact. The reason that we have a zoning board of appeals is to have a quasi judicial body able to exercise some discretion to make adjustments to make this social contract work and not be unreasonably draconian and result in bad outcomes. The requested variance grant would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. I think is self-evident. As I said before, this has been, the use that we're proposing is really no different than the use that's been put to for a very long time. And then finally, the alleged hardship is not self-created. Now, there's a couple reasons that it's not self-created. First of all, and I think, where we started last week, or last month, I should say, is that, we're a contract vendee. So there's a lot of sort of preliminary case on that. My client hasn't created this issue. They're looking to solve the problem, right? So contract vendees, are not, they certainly did not create this issue. Now, through our conversation last time, I think, the question was raised. American Heart Association built their offices, or when the Church of Christ bought it from them, shouldn't they have known about the zoning? Well, it's very clear law in the state of New York, and I'll give you a couple cases for the sake of the record here. That when the situation changes around the when the situation changes in terms of the market or the demand for the use of a piece of property. That change results in it not being considered self-created. So I'm just giving these for you to have for your file, to follow along with me. But the upshot's pretty simple and pretty intuitive. The world has changed. Now, was this potentially more attractive spot for a church or a house in the past? It could have been. It's not now. The real estate experts are telling us that unequivocally, and it's very difficult to contradict that truism. So I'm just going to read you two sentences from these cases that I provided. I don't want to belabor the point too much, but first from the Conto Giannis case, that what the court says is the record establishes the petitioner did not construct the recreation building in 1974 with the goal of converting it to a multifamily dwelling several years down the line. The evidence demonstrates that the original purpose for the recreational building became obsolete. In such circumstances, the grant of a use variance may be appropriate. And for the second case, that's the Marion Avenue case, in light of the proof that the need for use variance only arose decades after the property was acquired due to a gradual shift in the character of the area that rendered the permitted residential use onerous and obsolete. Petitioners sufficiently alleged that the hardship identified by them was not self-created. So what's the point of the self-created hardship part of the test? And I went back and I looked, I saw that you had that guidance document from the comptroller in front of you when we last met. And that guidance document is very unambiguous as to why we have this rule. What the guidance document says that you're relying on is
You say the original purpose of the recreational building became obsolete. In this case, is that the use of a religious office?
so what they're trying to say is the original building was used for the way that it was used for many years, just like in this case, right? And then only later did it become obsolete. And I think the point they're trying to make is when you look at the paragraph I think that you read from last meeting, it says that it's well settled that a use variance cannot be granted where the unnecessary hardship complained of has been created by the applicant, or where he or she acquired the property knowing of the existence of a condition that he or she now complains of. It says in the Carriage Works case, in addressing self-created hardship, the court stated, the courts should not be placed in the position of having to guarantee the investment of careless land buyers. The same advice should apply to zoning. So and they go on to say, what they explain is in that case, it's not our job. You buy the property, you don't know what it's zoned. It's not for us to be put into this position where we're expected to bail you out. That makes sense. I mean, when you say it that way, that's the reason we have this rule. That's not what happened here. What happened here is someone built this building in 1984. It worked, more or less, until 2020. And then, just like in the two cases that I provided to you, the situation changed. The world changed. And now that is no longer a viable use for that building. In my opinion, having done this for a long time,
Due to COVID?
due to the last 5 years, no one wants to use that building in any way that it's currently zoned. And anytime you have a situation where you have a building that is in good shape, it's not that the building's derelict, it's not that the building can't be isn't functional in some way. You have a useful property, right? That is capable of being utilized if zoning allowed. If you find yourself in a position where the zoning forces you into a tear down. That is when you know you need to issue a use variance. That is not the outcome that is supposed to be, that is supposed to fall from that. Now, obviously, it's, you shouldn't do anything to damage the neighborhood. I'm not saying it should be, you know, a bowling alley, right? But that's not the situation here, right? This is a low impact office, which is very similar to what, to the use that's always been put. So I understand you have other things on your agenda. I understand you gave me a lot of time. I'll stop there, to answer questions.
So the question, and I'm sympathetic to what you're arguing. At the last meeting, we heard from other residents in the community who said, if you lowered the price, 400,000, 200,000, someone might be willing to come in, put in a couple of apartments in that building. What do you say to those residents?
So in the affidavit that was provided by the listing agent, they said they had someone who went and investigated whether it could be converted to multifamily. So I can't economically viable to be done.
Do you have a cost estimate to reflect
Multifamily is
that?
not allowed in R two.
First,
Two families aren't allowed, is this gonna be a single family residence? Well, is there other than religious facilities that are called wells to be allowed there?
I have these, I can read all the uses. Actually, they're in our letter too, we go through them all, it's on page 2 of my letter. Under the current zoning, it says that the primary uses are single family dwellings, home occupations, residential, accessory use, family daycare homes, and group family care, daycare homes. There's also site plan uses, so uses with site plan approval, cemeteries, educational facilities, family adult daycare homes, government facilities, public utilities, religious uses, residential care facilities, golf courses and private stables. The other thing that, you know, I neglected to mention that one of the reasons I told you when the code was passed is at the time, another reason is not really self-created, is even if you make us stand in the shoes of the Church of Christ, which I'm not sure you should because we're contract vendees, but even if you did, the current zoning didn't apply when they bought the property in 2007.
Was it R2 when they bought the property in 2007?
No, so the current zoning, I went back and checked your code. Your code was not adopted until December of 2007. And when you look at your code, what it did was it rescinded the entire previous code. So if you look at 192-5, the town of DeWitt code is hereby repealed in its entirety, except as expressly provided herein. So it's as if the previous zoning never existed. And so this building predates the current zoning by 20 years, more than 20 years. The current owner purchased it prior to the enactment of the zoning. So the law, in addition to the world changing around it, which I think is the easy, most relevant thing, the law also changed on top of them too. This restriction was imposed after the Church of Christ bought the building.
But when they did buy the building, what was the zoning then? What was it R2?
There was no zone because it was repealed. From our
What
point,
is
before
this-
the repeal,
that's
what was it
the- what
before
was
the
it?
repeal?
Yeah,
doesn't matter,
It does
It
matter.
does
because it was
matter.
repealed.
because
Because-
it was the American Heart Association and then it was the Church of Christ, so it looks like,
Had a permit, so I didn't.
it
So,
looks like it was R two
You've
and they
had
were
zoning
under.
from the 60s, but what I'm saying from a legal point of view, I'll read you the sentence again. The town of DeWitt code is hereby repealed in its entirety, except as expressly provided in said ordinance in this chapter, as revised thereby. Such repeal shall not affect or impair any act done, offense committed, or right accruing, accrued, or acquired, or liability penalty.
That would mean that any property is not zoned.
So as of 2007, they did that on purpose, so they had a choice. They could repeal it and create non-conforming uses. And there's wisdom in that, which is what they basically did, is that anybody that had a use at that point was a non-conforming use that could continue. Or what you could do is, instead of repealing, you could just amend pieces of it and leave other parts intact. But they chose to repeal the whole zoning code, because I guess the changes were big enough that they felt that that's what they wanted.
To sell as a single family residence, it would have to take some substantial cost to modify it, be a residence again, or to be a residence in the first place, right? If it's not done at 495.
Do we know how much they bought it for in 2007?
300 grand. And that's in the affidavits. And Josh, to answer your question, the experts say it can't be converted from the point of view of two reasons. One is its internal layout isn't conducive, so it would have to essentially
Be
gut
tied
it,
out,
right?
yeah.
And then the second reason is there's no market for a 4,700 square foot single family house
On a
in
tight
the
turn.
cleaners
Yeah.
parking lot. What's that? Correct.
So you're talking about how you're a contract vendee, but I mean, the guidance says that the decision of the ZBA should be based on the existing owner and not the potential purchaser. So I agree that you're a contract vendee, but the guidance clearly says that we're not to take the position and make a decision based on the contract vendee, but that of the owner and showing hardship. So, or showing that it wasn't self-created rather. So you're saying to that point that there was no zoning when they purchased.
It was only what it was.
I'm saying this, that the current owner is essentially existing as a non-conforming prior existing use.
But the zoning
because
become
it
less
was
restrictive. Did our new zoning become less restrictive or more restrictive than previous zoning?
It doesn't matter. So they're, from our point of view, because you repealed your previous zoning, our start date is December 2007. But in any event, even if you don't, sorry, guys.
Well, I was gonna say, 'cause I think the cases say the opposite of. Right, that they can rely on, you can consider the contract vendee is different than a buyer who purchased the property, then came afterwards. For relief.
Yeah, two responses to that. First, exactly what you said. I'll repeat it. There's lots of cases that say that. But the second thing is the two cases that I handed out also say where the world changes, where the situation changes. And clearly the world has changed. It's been on the market for 5 years. Nobody wants to use this as a single family house. Like that's so obvious, right? I don't think anyone can credibly argue with that. So those cases say that's a third way to solve your self-created hardship problem. Way number one, that we're a contract vendee, as Mr. Warburg said. Way number two, that the world has changed, which is what those cases say. Way number three is that this, when the current owner, the Church of Christ, purchased the property, it was not, this zoning didn't exist. So in addition to the world changing, in addition to the contract vendee being a different group of people, the law changed on top of it.
It was still R2, they could have known that this is going to be difficult to sell as anything besides R2 or religious use.
But it worked well for 13 years. You're not being asked to bail out a foolish buyer who failed to read the zoning when they bought property, which is what your guidance says the purpose of the self-created factor is to defend against.
I think there's a distinction. Someone who purchases property without doing any due diligence, then, figures out maybe their initial plan is not gonna work. Now they wanna make this into 2 or 3 or 4 family property and they come to us for relief in that case. Versus somebody like applicant who's doing the due diligence, examining the property and come just initially for relief. It's not the church asking for the variance, it's the.
Well, the church is on the application. They're both making the application.
Well, we're required to have the property owner.
I mean, that's semantics to me, where they could modify the application to be one of the ID.
I think we're referring to is we're required to have the property owner also sign it.
Right.
Yeah, so they're not the applicant, but anytime the contract vendee makes an application, we must consent to it. Otherwise, I'd be selling you the Brooklyn Bridge. Right?
To me, walking through the factors, it's like, it's no change in the neighborhood really, it would be an improvement to have, this is like the perfect use for this, low intensity use for this corner, it's a perfect use for that, not a ton of traffic going in and out. Frankly, I don't think it's really a safe single family residence with any children or someone who couldn't see, that corner is treacherous really. But like I said initially, I drive almost every day to the JCC, and have for 8 years now, also doing cleaners. I'd like to see a way to make this work because the building has been for sale or unoccupied, I think, for that entire 8-year period.
5 years.
5 years, so a long time, it's had the sign up there. I mean, it's certainly so there's no change in the neighborhood, it's certainly a unique spot for sure. Then, the financial one's usually the hardest to meet, but you know, we do have evidence before us that there's no financial way to do anything with this building in its current zoning. And I don't have a problem with the self-created. I think this is somebody who's making the right decision and coming to us initially before purchasing it, trying something else and failing. We're not being asked to bail anybody out. If we think it's an improvement for the neighborhood, which it is, you know, I think our body's designed to give relief to people or to property owners where there's no way to make it happen under the current zoning. I'd rather it look like this and drive by this every day to the JCC than let it deteriorate before someone tear it down. Personally.
Does this punt the issue for future perpetually, or is this resolve this issue?
Which is the issue? Financial or self-created?
In the future, they'd be able to sell it as a
business,
off.
so if it sells to another business, then it's.
But the business could change to a different business that's not.
Can we limit it to office businesses instead of just like a
Oh,
restaurant?
for sure, yeah,
Like,
you're limited.
So I don't think it'd be appropriate to have like a ice cream store, a grocery store here, you know, or
Right.
something like that, something with a ton of intensity. But an office building seems like the right use.
I agree that it is a unique circumstance, and I also agree that it does not change the essential character of the neighborhood, and I like the building a lot. I think it's an improvement to what's there. We all probably agree with that. My concern is that the use variance standard is very strict, and it's different than an area variance. It's less flexible, and it's all four criteria have to be met or it fails. Like, it's not, and I think the application, the dollars and cents proof, I, from my perspective, and I'm just one opinion, I just don't think it's been met with the affidavits that have been submitted. One of them is an interested party for the transaction, and the other is a real estate agent, and the guidance clearly says that that's like the worst kind of evidence to submit in favor of an application. I think you're identifying that there's no way to prove value, but I think there has to be something less interested than the affidavits of a real estate agent. So I'm concerned that the first element is not met, and I am concerned that the self-creation. I think that when the church bought the property, they knew what they were buying. So I do think that there's an issue regarding the third element.
So what I could say is that, this is quoting the matter of O'Connell versus the city of Buffalo, which is a fourth department case from 2009. Evidence indicating that it has been difficult to sell property is helpful in demonstrating why the property is not valuable under the current zoning. And then the Allen versus First case, which is old, it's a third department case from 56, but been around. Says the property has barely paid expenses when occupied, has been in the market for sale for years, has been listed with a real estate agent, and no buyers have been found except for commercial purposes. It was zoned residential, and eventually they should be used there. So I understand that the guidance says that in some circumstances, an appraisal could be useful. It
Or at
could.
least an uninterested party,
Yeah, I mean, I think.
at least an uninterested party. I think we have two interested affidavits here.
They are sworn. I mean,
I'm not saying,
I-
not to doubt their qualifications at all.
But Matt, this is a quasi judicial body. If you doubt their veracity, you can swear them in and ask them questions. But to just say, I just don't believe them because it doesn't feel right, is the wrong thing to
That's
do.
not what I'm saying. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is the guidance suggests that affidavits from interested real estate agents is not the best form of proof. That's what I know. Not saying that.
So our first affidavit was not from a listing agent, and then you asked for more proof from the listing agent, which we provided.
Esther Zorn, is that the listing or selling agent?
Esther is,
Okay, but
And then our
Jeff Mooney.
yeah, he is not.
And I think part of the concern has to be, at least from my perspective, what we're accepting now on the variance is what people are gonna come back and ask for critical evaluation on the next application. So if we accept the listing agent affidavit, then the next person who comes for this type of variance is gonna want the same treatment.
You said that.
Yeah.
What what does the, oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm sympathetic to the application. His office buildings now, someone's gonna put it to good use, it's not being used, I'm sympathetic to all that, but my neighbors have said to me, and this is encroachment, right, because right now it's already zoned residential, if this goes, there are some multifamily apartments down the street, you could see somebody wanting to turn those into some sort of commercial enterprise or stores, it's just pushing further and further back into residential areas, you see it on the other side on West Genesee Street. So what do I say to those neighbors?
So I think that's an important question, and that's the reason you have the character of the neighborhood factor, and then also the uniqueness factor. So with the character of the neighborhood, I think it's very helpful that this has been used as offices since 1984. So I think what you say to them is, we're just saying this can continue to be used the way it has been used, and we're not suggesting that any new commercial use can enter your neighborhood. I think the second thing that you say to them is this is kind of unique, and that this is not a parcel in the middle of a single family residential neighborhood. This is, if you look at the map, it's on this curve, it's pushed way out in, into the commercial area. So it's just different. I guess the only other thing, and I guess I wouldn't say this to them, but this is just my visceral reaction to it. People talk about a slippery slope as if it's a logical reason that something might happen, but when you go to, logic class, it's the opposite. So you are the zoning board of appeals, you are a quasi judicial body, you make decisions on individual circumstances. And you're, by law, and due to Sasso v. Osgood, the case, you look at each case individually. You don't create precedent in that way. Now, I understand what Matt's saying, just in terms of procedures, that if somebody else feels that they're being treated differently in a procedural way, I understand. But on the facts of each case, because you issue a use variance on this property, on these facts, in this situation, doesn't mean you have to issue any other use variances that would encroach on that.
Particularly because those apartments are already apartments, which makes it a little different.
And we wouldn't approve a variance to change those apartments into like a grocery store or like a strip mall. That just wouldn't happen. Even if someone gave us 100 affidavits.
Say never.
I know.
What's the guy that suggested it would be good on this?
Independent appraisal and market
Independent,
analysis.
yeah,
That says it's
I've seen some cases on here, I've just been looking at it.
owned by actual dollars and cents proof.
It talks about showing by dollars and cents that each use allowed. You gotta show each use would not be viable, go through the list. But that's just what I'm reading in some of these cases. And I think the part of the self-creation, I think the point that the zoning changed after the purchase does help the applicant.
I agree.
and I'm finding a bunch more cases on the contract venue issue though.
I think as an attorney, my fear on the first, I've already said this, on the first criteria is the documentation on dollars and cents and having some objective analysis in that way. Because like Kelly says, I don't see the problem with 2 and 4, right?
No, I mean, honestly, I think
Anyone
it's something has to happen to that property, I agree. And I think it's a pretty building and I think,
we want to have a record that shows for the next time that we followed a certain standard for what we're accepting as dollars and cents evidence. So that the next time, maybe the evidence is not as strong on the affidavits as you have here. People are saying, hey, you approved it for them with that evidence, we want the same thing. That's the spot we want to avoid. But before the meeting, I was more worried about I was
Or three.
more concerned about the self-creation, but now
I feel less concerned about that.
Can I ask a question?
yes,
I've been doing real estate for 22 years.
you are Esther Zorn.
I
Thanks
am,
for the
I'm
record.
sorry, I'm Esther
Sure.
Zorn. I'm the listing agent.
Yes,
Been doing real estate for 22 years. I would say, I would have to ask, if you were to get, you're advocating that an appraiser come in and tell you how much the property is worth.
I'm not advocating that, I'm saying that's what we're being told we need to consider as to
Okay.
satisfy that criteria.
So if an appraiser came in and said it was based on the use that you're saying that it has to be used for, they would have to take that into account, appraiser. What if it came in for less or for more? What difference would it make?
I think it might influence whether the applicant is able to get a reasonable return or not, if they're seeing an appraisal that has fair market value for whatever the factors are they're considering. I don't know everything that appraisers
Right,
necessarily
less or
consider.
more than the offer that's already being offered, right?
Or maybe less or more than the purchase price, the original purchase.
Just on the question of reasonable return, it's hard, if you're saying, hey, we've offered it at $400,000, our appraisal says that it's worth $500,000, and we're trying to go 100,000, 200,000 below this appraisal, and we can't sell it, that's helpful. Because you're saying, we're going way under fair market value, judged by an independent appraiser, and as you can see, we can't achieve that $500,000, we can't get our money back.
Yeah, isn't it true that you entertained an offer at 300, but they didn't go forward because the zoning didn't work?
Right.
That's my only
Because
point.
of the use.
Just the use.
But I don't have a vote, and if there's members who feel another way, feel free to make a motion, just keep in mind that all the criteria have to be met, if you feel they are, it's okay to make a motion to approve. If you feel like one of them is not met, then it will be a motion to deny.
I feel like the proof is,
If you need more information, then you're welcome to ask the applicant for more information and table for another month.
I'm satisfied that they met the proof that the building's not gonna sell unless it's zoning is changed. I mean, we're not talking about a building that's been listed for even for 1 or 2 years. It's been on the market for a long, long time. Did we say 8? We said 5 years?
Yeah, 2000 years.
So I mean, they've tried to list it, to sell it, it's not moving. And you know, we do have evidence we can rely on. If an applicant comes before us with affidavits, we can scrutinize those affidavits, and if that's all they want to provide, we tell them it's not good enough. We don't have to give every applicant after this one the same, treat them, say that affidavits are always going to be accepted. This is a different situation. The property's been on the market for 5 years and hasn't sold. And that's what,
68 showings.
so there's really no interest unless the zoning changes, and I'm satisfied with the self-created, and I think we're all satisfied on the no change in the DVDs.
I mean, again, I'm just one person. If somebody wants to make a motion, they're welcome to do that. I don't think the first element or the first criteria is met. With the evidence that we have, but you're welcome to make the motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second? That's Joe. I'm gonna go through these criteria here, please. Express your thoughts when I ask these questions for the record. First, whether the applicant can realize a reasonable return provided that the lack of return is substantial as demonstrated by competent financial evidence.
Again, let's just repeat, two affidavits from 2 licensed real estate professionals testifying that the property is not going to sell unless the zoning is changed, unless the variance is issued. And given that the property's been on the market for more than 5 years, it's just a very unique situation. I'm satisfied with the evidence.
No comments?
I don't think that the first element is satisfied or the first criteria is satisfied because I think we have an interested affidavit from the seller or one of the real estate people involved in the property, and I don't feel that there's been an adequate demonstration of the dollars and cents or an independent evaluation of the property that would be sufficiently not biased to find that criteria number 1 has been met.
Any others?
So can we talk
about the cost for just a minute, because we've talked a lot about how long it was on the market, and we've said multiple times that you can't get a reasonable return. I'm just, you know. 400 is approximately, what, $90 a square foot, right? They paid 300 in 2007, so it's, you know. Reasonable return, what does that mean? What is a reasonable return to make, you know, to come out even after?
You decide,
Nearly 2
ZBA
decades.
decides what the reason.
Right, so I guess I'm just wondering, I mean, you think it would sell for 200?
It's about the use of it. Who are you going to sell it for 200? A single family person?
Maybe a
Yeah.
daycare. Maybe,
No, there's not enough parking. We had a daycare, there's not enough parking,
Yeah, if you look.
and it's a very dangerous place.
Could the
for
parking
a
be
daycare.
created? I've never been on the lot, just so you know. Could parking be
There's
created
about
there?
15 parking places. 15, 16 parking places.
It would just takes one use that they could reasonably do.
well, that's kind of that's where I'm stuck too, is because there are. I'm sympathetic too, and I think you've made much better arguments than. Or you've elaborated on arguments that I think are much more convincing this month than last, so. I'm just caught up on the list of uses, and yes, I mean, financial advisors are as good a use as any. But it is a relative, I mean, there are other options here, and I'm just wondering
What other?
if at a loss.
Well, and I also wonder if we have enough history provided in what we have to show that the first criteria has been met regarding the history of the property and the efforts in connection with that.
First,
Permitted structures and use, single family dwellings, home occupation, residential accessory use, family daycare home, group family home. You read these. With site plan review uses, cemetery, educational facility, family adult daycare home, government facility, public utility, religious use, residential care facility. Regulation, golf course and private stable.
the case law, I'm saying, even as ridiculous as some of those may be, the case law says that we've gotta go through each use and give dollars and cents proof as to why this can't provide a reasonable return. And it may be ministerial in a lot of ways, they may be able to get this information. But
Well, the other thing I'm,
Doesn't the time on the market not demonstrate that though? 5 years on the market without any.
well, 5 years on the market at a certain price, if it had been 5 years on the market,
Right,
And
I mean,
if
focus
it's 5
for those
years on the
uses.
market at 150, it'd be different.
right, and like, what's the average square foot cost of a residential property in foreclosure? Like, you happen to have an idea, I mean, I'm just curious about a reasonable return, people reasonably lose money all the time, I mean, it's just, would it sell for 200?
it's a reasonable return given the zoning restrictions that they're facing.
Well, that was also not self-created, so why should they lose money because the code changed, I don't know, I could go either way, I'm just curious about all the other uses.
It's been used as a professional building, professional office building since it was born.
Would you happen to
Since it
know if
was
the floor
built.
plan was the same when it
I'm
was
sorry,
built?
what?
Was the floor plan, was it built with the
Yes,
current
it's
floor? plan?
exactly the same.
It hasn't been gutted and
It hasn't been,
reconfigured.
but it's exactly the same. And we've had people come in to look at it for residential and they said, this is an office building and what would I do with this? And we've had churches come in, that's where I hope that we might be able to do something, but there's not enough parking. And there's no place to put more parking on that plot of land. So they went away. We had people come in and look at it for multi-family. And we're told no. And they also said, but this is an office building and it would be so expensive to transform it. It's an office building. It's the way it's always been used. So if it could be zoned as a professional office building, that's how it's been used. And that's the only way it should be used.
The other aspect of this that I find so interesting is if you really zoom in on the zoning map, I just find it so odd that it's R2. There's one adjacent property that's also zoned R2, it's neighbor. Do you know anything about that property?
Well, the whole back of that neighbor is a huge neighborhood.
No, I'm just
I mean,
saying,
it's-
I'm just,
No, but up
Yeah,
That-
residential.
that whole neighborhood, I'm very familiar with that neighborhood.
Yep.
It's a full stop residential neighborhood with kids everywhere. So-
yeah, no, I don't disagree, I was, Right, so this, what I'm saying is, I just find it interesting, it's the last address on Thompson.
This property.
Right, I understand, and I understand and agree with everything Kelly just said about it being residential. All I'm commenting on is, it's interesting to me the way that this line was drawn in 2007, if that's when this line was drawn, in that it's only one of two properties on Thompson that are zoned R2, whereas
Oh, I see.
all of these are R3.
Yeah.
I'm curious about every other house, which is actually on Orvilleton, because the road changes at the curve, is R2. I'm just curious, and I don't know anything, you know, I'm complete ignorance here, what the process would be to change it to R3. It's just, for me, that seems like the town board. To me, it's,
It is because of the location of the other businesses, it is.
but there's one
That's
house
what
in
makes this
between
property
this
unique.
and R3, in the first property to the north that's zoned R3.
And I don't want to tell you about, I don't know much about that house. Yeah.
In the forties, it looked like it was supposed to, the neighborhood maybe was expected to expand, it's the original subdivision map, but it didn't happen. Great Northern Mall, Great Northern Mall, Starving Town Mall across the street, and Erie Boulevard probably came up with that too.
To me, I mean. I'm not even sure I'm for or against it, I just think it's interesting, to me. A multifamily use would make more sense. And you're literally one property away from other R3s, it's just an interesting observation. The house that is in between the two is,
That way.
there's not a lot of.
Is
Yeah,
it the White House?
the value, it doesn't,
It doesn't really, I mean, I think the question here isn't whether or not it's a good idea. I think the question, because I think it is. And I think the building as proposed and the business as proposed in connection with it being in a residential. Abutting a residential neighborhood is a good idea. The question is just whether the criteria have been satisfied. That's all,
I agree, yeah.
that's all we have to look at. Is whether or not the criteria has been satisfied, not whether or not it's a good idea. I think we all agree it is. I think this is a good application, and I think this property is gonna continue to see an issue, and we all probably would like to see it advance. I think the issue is only related to whether or not the criteria have been met, because I think it is a good idea.
So would you be more comfortable with the record if there was an appraisal involved?
I would, yes, because I think then we can rely on that.
And we can say that this is what the case law contemplates, when I'm looking and it's saying independent appraisals or market analysis, that's to me. Us not getting these applications all the time, I feel more comfortable following what the case law is telling me.
Right.
What the guidance is telling me, but like I said, I came in thinking that it's a self-created issue, but
Yeah, I feel,
I don't feel like you don't meet that based on the history of the zoning and when things were adopted. I think that's a good point.
I think everything for me
But
with
it's-
that part of it, what he's saying, I think resolves everything. But
I think
for
number
me,
one,
it's number one.
if you get the appraisal, that protects this board in the future, in my opinion.
I agree.
So I can see that an appraisal. The one thing I want to say though is an appraiser is sort of ill suited to value the unique part of this, right? What appraisers do is they'll look for sales into it and how much they sell per square foot. And giving appraisal, he can tell you, generally speaking, a single family house sells for per square foot. He's not gonna be able to tell you if this house will sell for that. We already know that it won't, but
But it will be in the record.
But it will, yeah,
it will be in the record.
and I think the uniqueness is its own criteria, and we all agree it's unique.
Because I expect the appraiser to tell you what a house is worth into it per square foot and then say, but I can't say what this is worth because it's zoning. As long as that,
But that would be in the record, and I think that.
if that would satisfy you, I can get that. But I could
It'd be
just.
nice if they
have it
said
work-
this is worth nothing as a single family residence.
Yeah,
It might.
they might.
We don't know what they're gonna say, but it would be in the
It
record.
would be
for
in the
board's
record for
reliance.
us to
And
rely
we
on
could
that.
say that we've gotten all the evidence that's required.
And while we're
For us.
searching, it sounds like we're punching for some more information. So the issue of the uses, I think, is also important. So demonstrating that it can't be a daycare center and nobody else wants to use it, something other than offices.
To indicate the different uses, I don't know who was doing that type of report.
Some little more comfort that, if, so for example, Lemoyne doesn't want this to be a student, or students might live, or SU doesn't want this as something students might live in, or there's no other use for it besides offices. No, I don't mean, like, you know, like.
That might be a bad example, because Lemoyne looked into this and they decided not to buy it because of it.
I just think it needs to be
You need the document.
a little bit more. And actually, if you're submitting more documentation, I would like there to be, I mean, what you've said is enough for the not self-created, but I mean, if there was something more that said something about it being repealed and that
Yes.
that would be, to have that be in the record.
Sure, we can, we'll attach, your code to it.
I'm not trying to be overly difficult, I just,
Particularly because it's a kind of a case of first impression for this board. You think it's important that would have the record at least, the items that we need.
It's a reasonable position. I just think that property being on the market for 5 years with no takers at this price, this already demonstrates that. And it is enough of a distinction that we wouldn't have to say to future applicants, oh, you're fine, just give us 2 affidavits from the real estate agents that are listing the property.
Would we be asking the same from another application?
We would
They
be,
came in,
yeah.
I'd say, where's your appraisal? I'd say, hey.
I know, well, I know, I just don't, I think we could still ask that from future applicants if we don't ask it here.
but it's harder. Yeah.
That's inconsistent. That would be
If the-
inconsistent. And we'd be saying, for this case, we don't need it.
If the property had been listed for 5 years.
But every case is different, so I hear what you're.
And I think that the more focus too should be on, yes, it's been listed for 5 years, but for me, dollars and cents wise, it would be helpful too for you to show it was $90 a square foot, which is below the median average square foot cost of a residential property averaged at 170. You
I
would,
think we do that first affidavit, but we'll go back and take another look at that.
I guess I'm a little confused about residential versus commercial. Are you saying an appraiser, a residential appraiser to do the appraisal or a commercial appraiser?
well, it's a fair question, because the prices are significantly different. You've shown it as both, right?
Yes,
We're looking at the zoning, it's a zoning, R2.
Right, it's an R2, so it would have to be.
What about the market for religious offices? Are people buying religious offices out there?
churches are
Obviously.
closing.
I mean, all the religious folks who wanted to buy it wanted to have a church there. They didn't want to have administrative offices for.
Right,
church,
churches
Which is
don't have extra
significant,
money.
you know.
I understand it's a unique.
Yeah, the whole reason that United Church of Christ left was because of the pandemic and their people could go work in their own homes and that's why they let it go.
That also speaks.
That
to-
also speaks to it, and that's not in the, I mean, I can imagine a lot of ways, a lot of which I think you've covered tonight as to why it's not so.
If not for COVID, maybe they wouldn't have sold it.
Right.
They would have.
Yeah, they might have stayed there, but
So, yeah,
not
paragraph
many
18.
religious entities
Where are you?
that have
First
the
up there?
financial resources.
In the first half, it says there's been limited interest in making continued use of the property as a religious use. The handful of churches that expressed interest in the property, were interested in potential use of the property as a church, not as an administrative office. Because of the very limited parking on the site and configuration of the building, each of those respective matters determined that the property is unsuitable for church use.
Would the church, if a church went in, would they need a variance, a use variance, or excuse me, an area variance in the parking, do we know?
A
They-
church
sure.
would.
For sure.
They needed more than
Well,
15
I guess it
parishioners.
depends on how many people are going to the church,
But realistically, for sure.
Very tiny congregation.
but I mean, I
Just
think,
asking.
are we,
No bad questions.
Yeah.
You can motion to table at any time.
I would make a motion to table for production of additional evidence.
Second? All in favor?
Yes.
Abstained, opposed, motion's carried. Thank you, and I do
Thank
think a lot of
you, I
progress. we made.
appreciate it, thank you.
For all of that. We'll have you on first at the next meeting, okay?
Appreciate it.
Not sure. I think it's really, I think next time.
Maybe we have, Josh.
They're willing to do this. I think it's just such a unique building, it's been on the market for as long as I can remember. I think it'd be easy to distinguish it from the future applicants, but they're doing it, no worries.
I'm just caught up on, could they, is it just listed too high?
Would we,
Is it
Well,
listed
that's
too high?
what was.
Sure, it's been on the
people who
market.
were
That's what the
here-
appraisal's
people
gonna
who
tell
were
you.
Here the last meeting
No.
who spoke in the,
Got it, that's more depth.
they were,
we wouldn't expect someone to sell it for less than they would. I mean,
Well,
not-
people, that happens to people all the time.
Yeah.
When the code says reasonable return, does that mean they're required, like they can't lose money? People
And
lose
they're-
money on
they're
property all the
all the
time.
They got value out of their use, so.
They also
that would
did, okay.
make their-
Right. I don't know, I
Could they
would,
sell it for $200,000 to someone who wants to turn it into a
well, they
daycare?
could probably give it away.
The parking
It's a
for not
family
day,
daycare, it's not like a daycare center. It would be like.
it would be like what's on
House.
Thompson across from JCC, right?
Mhm.
Isn't that?
No, that isn't, but there's one on the corner of,
No, listen, I also think we should make a note somewhere where we say that it be limited when it passed. Did we say we could do
I
that?
would talk.
That we can limit it, cause I think if they produce that,
Yes,
that's,
you can.
it's gonna pass, and then we need to say.
It's only
that the
allowed for-
further, for, yeah,
Financial office.
financial office
Right.
or. Low
Impact.
impact.
Yeah.
I feel that 100% opposite, I mean, if they're trying to do like a grocery store, a corner
Correct.
store, or a daycare.
This
or
to
anything
me
like
is
that.
ideal,
For it to be
I just think it
residential,
needs to
I
be,
think we have to put in a lot more. Like plumbing and bathrooms and whatever.
they would have to tear it
Tear
down,
it down and build a house.
tear it down and build a
So
house.
how would you get a reasonable return? They'd have to spend money to
But
sell.
that's not, that's the criteria
Got it.
specifically
You
says
got
that
it.
the gutting of it and the cost of it
It's
is not,
lots of houses that are that big.
that makes
They're not-
it self
They're usually
creating.
a lake.
I was gonna say, but who would want a 46,000, we have, who would want a 4,600, square foot house on that corner?
Okay, let's get to the next section.
Yeah, we're not in the public hearing anymore. Okay, second, Bill Murphy, thank you for waiting for all that. Appreciate it.
Did you learn?
Better than
I hope
TV.
you learned a lot about use
Sorry.
variances.
I'll just tell you.
We're gonna be just as hard on you on your.
Use variances are very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, okay.
No one is here.
Familiar, I've tried to get a couple of those.
They're tough.
They're often not game.
Are you here as an interested party for this case?
6,700 VIP parking.
Okay, are you willing to waive reading of the notice, Bill?
Well, but sure.
Save my breath, I appreciate it.
All right, go ahead.
I wanna say before, I don't forget that for seeker purposes, town is declaring lead agency for purposes of seeker. Type 2 action for area variance for single family, 2-family, or 3-family residents. And there are no negative environmental impacts caused by the proposed action. It was not referred to the county planning board because these are residential area variances.
Bill Murphy, Space Architectural Studio, representing John and Lisbeth Vavalo. They are the 7 Crossroads LLC. And Lisbeth is the managing member and the applicant. They have purchased the home at 27 Crossroad and would like to make some modifications to the single family residence on the premises. Modifications include an additional garage bay. They have 2 daughters that have reached driving age. They're not twins, they're close together in age and will have another vehicle, so getting it pulled indoors in the winter would be the goal. And then they're looking at adding a little more living space to the primary level of the home. The variances requested are due to the tight side yards that exist in the cul-de-sac. We are requesting area variance on the one side of 3.5 feet.
What side of the
So-
house is that, north, southeast, west,
Give me 1 second, let me open it up.
for record?
So the north side of the house, we're proposing at 3.5 feet. That's to the garage, the attached garage. The living space is further back. It's actually within the It's outside of 9 feet, the actual living space, but that garage bay that we're adding is encroaching. Where we need a variance of 5.5 feet to the north. And then when you add both side yards together, we come up a little bit short of the 25 feet that are required. So we need a variance there of about 6.6 feet. After we make the change.
18.4.
Yep. That's correct. 6.6 feet, the variance requested there in the combined side yard setback. We're gonna replace all the windows, we're gonna redo the HVAC equipment in the home. We're gonna re-insulate, we're gonna redo all the electrical. As we were talking about gutting, this is just pretty much a gut. It's an older home, it was pretty much all original. In its current state, and it's just time to update the structure and get it ready for the next 50 years of
Living.
life. Yeah, exactly. Anybody have any questions on the application or of the project in general?
I'm okay with it.
If you have no problems, you can make a motion. We have two variances, one for the single side yard setback, one for a total side yard setback. Start with the single. 5.5 feet on the north side.
Make a motion to approve.
Any second?
Second.
Josh?
Yep.
Let's go through the criteria. Will there be an undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood or documents by properties created by granting?
It's consistently in the crimes.
Some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than variance? Substantial?
Yes.
Yes.
Will there be an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood district? Self-created?
Yes.
Motion made by Kelly to approve a single side yard setback variance, 5.5 feet on the north side of the principal structure. For a total side yard setback of 3.5 feet, seconded by Josh. Call for a vote, member Trevette,
Yes.
member Perrin,
Yes.
member Del Posta,
Yes.
member Warbeck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cornfeld,
Yes.
Chairperson O'Connor.
Yes.
The first one passes 6-0. Any motion on the total side yard setback?
Motion to approve.
Second. .4 feet. Seconded by Josh. Criteria, will there be an undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties created?
No.
Similar answers,
Yes.
some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue, substantial,
Yes.
adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Self-created, Dan beat me. Motion made by Kelly to approve an area variance for a total side yard setback 6.6 feet. Or a total side yard setback of 18.4 feet, seconded by Josh. Call for a vote, member Trevette,
Yes.
member Perrin,
Yes.
member Del Posta,
Yes.
member Warbeck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cornfeld,
Yes.
member O'Connor.
Yes.
Congratulations, Bill, way easier for this one.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in there.
You're always better off coming through the area variance.
It's nasty. Look at, that's the neighbors and they have to,
We would know what they care.
Yeah.
We would definitely know.
well, that, and they're like, they have to be on the property.
Oh, yeah, that 29 right there?
Yeah, that neighbor is very close.
I was gonna say, They have to be on the property.
Well, it's about the same, they're about 3.5 actually. And
Holy smokes.
It's a very tight little area there.
They like each other.
Whenever there's a circle and there's like, pizza slices, that's what happens.
Are you
So
willing to
you-
waive
you-
reading of the notice?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you willing to waive reading of the notice?
Thank you.
We appreciate that.
Briefly, before you get started, for purposes of seeker, the town is declaring lead agency. For purposes of seeker, this is an unlisted action for commercial area variance. There are no negative environmental impacts associated with this action. Was this referred to the county?
Yes, no position.
Referred to the county with no position.
So the planning board.
Yeah.
Position, right?
Planning board recommendation here,
Should be.
planning board says.
So the planning board,
35-foot setback,
Just trying to pull it up.
recommending yes.
yeah, the planning board,
That setback is for the purpose of the dumpster, right? So you want the closure,
planning board approved the site plan. They came in to update, to put a ramp on the back and make some other updates on a loading dock. And approved the site plan and then came back, they wanted to move the dumpster a little bit, and because it's a corner lot, it has 2 front yards. So.
is there any more to it than that?
No, that's pretty much it.
Is that Jason for you?
I'm Alexandra Henderson with Worsley Architects and Engineers, on behalf of CF Smith Property Group.
What engineers?
Beardsley, BEARDSLEY.
So we have everything we need. There's 2 variances here, so with the last case, first would be 15-foot variance for a 35-foot front yard setback. Any motions there?
Before we do, why are we having dumpster in the?
Front yards.
Yeah, so it's a corner lot, so it's 2 front yards. The
Oh,
client wanted to put up this canopy.
Yeah, I should show you on that.
Yeah,
It's clear.
Survey or site plan?
site plan would probably be better.
No, the drawings.
Oh, that makes sense.
So the client wanted to put up this ramp to just basically be snow cover for the loading dock, so the employees were not slipping. And the ramp then blocked access from the haulers to the dumpsters in the current position, so we had to push the dumpsters out to give the haulers access.
That's, let's see. There.
Yeah, so the road, VIP Parkway is right here in this, and East Moreland Road would be up here.
So this is a front yard and that's a front yard,
Yep.
So it's kind of on like the secondary front yard.
which the planning board looks at, right?
Yeah.
They look at that.
I'm just thinking of feasible alternatives. There's nowhere else we can put the dumpster.
No, I don't know if you can scroll to the surveyor, so this lot is pretty tight. The side yard property line is directly adjacent to an easement. There are 2 shared easements for roadways, so this one's, I mean, obviously got all the parking spots, and then the property line is directly at the edge of the parking spots. Front yard for East Moreland Road, it just, the haulers couldn't get an access in here. We debated putting it in right here. They can't come around all the way around this corner, they have to back all the way back up. And then there's an overhead door right here that's used, and one up here, that's the one we're putting the canopy ramp on.
Okay, so the ramp's up in the upper right.
Yep, so the ramp will be up here,
Dumpster.
facing this way.
Dumpster's pretty close to
Oh,
where,
that's-
No, dumpsters will be
Yeah, right
up
there.
here,
which
yeah.
is close to where it currently is.
Yes.
And we're doing an enclosure too for
Yeah.
the dumpster.
Yeah.
Taking down a few trees, but putting up some trees to screen.
Okay.
So it's moving
I-
just a little from where.
Yeah.
it is.
I'm good with it.
Yep, I think you get.
Motion still true, Jamie?
Yes.
Motion by Jamie.
Second.
Second by Josh, did I hear that?
Yep.
Okay, go through the criteria, will there be an undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to neighborhood properties created? No. Dumpster's close to where it was. some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance? Guess that's what Dan was asking. No. Appears that there's not. Is it substantial? What do we say for upstate pathology?
I was gonna say, we just did the
Yeah, we
last
did.
one.
Yeah, we did.
We
So we
said,
said
What's the
substantial
road
as Sharon?
we said it was.
It would be in the minutes, I don't remember.
Okay,
We're gonna find out, just,
You can go in my ZBA, hold on.
An
I'm
address.
gonna beat you, Kelly.
6,200.
What was the other one? Oh, 60 Fly Road.
We said yes.
You just went by it.
Says no, is this front yard or this is parking spaces? No.
That's reserved.
This is reserved parking? Sorry. Oh, dumpster, okay. We said no.
It's not subs-
So we said it was not substantial for upstate situation.
They were kind of, that's
That's
based
a
on how the
huge-
building is.
Every situation is
situated.
different, I'm just.
Yeah, because they're faced for upstate, they're trying to face their like interior road, but the way the code is. The front yard is the public road, so Fly Road's the front yard, and the front of their building is facing interior road, so that one's a little different.
Yeah,
So what are we
I
saying?
thought it was substantial.
Say yes? Yeah. Okay. Adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood?
No.
Self-created?
Yes.
All right, got a motion by Jamie. Get an area variance of 15 feet for a total front yard setback of 35 feet, seconded by Josh. For a vote, member Trevette,
Yes.
member Perrin,
Yes.
member Delaposta.
Yeah.
Member Warbeck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cornfeld.
Yes.
Chairperson O'Connor.
Yes.
Okay, passes 6-0. Dumpster, any other questions on the dumpster? Itself?
No.
There a motion?
I made the motion.
Kelly to approve location of the dumpster, front yard. A second?
Second.
By Josh. Will there be an undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties created by granting the variance? Some other method feasible for the applicant to pursue?
Yeah.
Substantial?
No.
Be an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district? Self-created?
Yes.
I have a motion made by Kelly to approve the location of a dumpster in a front yard. Seconded by Josh. Call for vote, member Trevette,
Yes.
member Perrin,
Yes.
member Delaposta.
Yes.
Member Warbeck,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cornfeld,
Yes.
Chairperson O'Connor.
Yes.
Congratulations, have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
No,
You're on. Whatever. This Thursday.
No, I think that was really good use for this talk. I think we're all learning a lot about it.
Is anyone here ever voted?
Just that.
for these things? I don't think so.
This is our first use variance.
Yeah, it's our first one.
Well, what do you think?
Chairman, you have one.
You're not a voting member, but I'm really curious to hear.